and welcome to the Gold Coats and Guns podcast for Friday, July 12th, 2024. My name is Tom Luongo, and we have a lot to talk about. It's going to have to make this one short and sweet. I've got Caitlin along with me, and she's incredibly busy. And she graciously gave me we got about half an hour. So, Caitlin, good morning. What do you want to talk about this morning?
Oh, Tom, you have been so spot on what's going on in the UK and in France. And the perception that this is a turn to the left, but that's not how it's actually been. There's
Right.
been, in effect, an overthrow of the establishment, and the left in both countries is going to claim a mandate, and that's not what's happening. And so I'm very interested because you've been so right about this. In what's the impact on the craziness that's going on in the US right now? What does this mean?
This is the weird part. When I've been saying, I hate to be a guest on my own podcast, but like the way I've always termed this, I go right back to what Lisa Han and I used to talk about on Sputnik News back in 2016, 2017, when I first started this, which is it's not left versus right, it's populism versus globalism. And what we had was a natural reaction against the existing status quo. And in France, they can't really bring themselves to go very right. They just can't do it. There's just too much. There's too much Derrida in their blood at this point, unfortunately. And then in the UK, well, nominally the right was in charge, and the Tories were hated, and they did everything imaginable to squander what they did, and it was all kind of fake. What happens with the United States is now very interesting because we're doing this on Friday the 12th, and I'm sitting here doing what I normally do, which is watch the German and U.S. 10-year, and I'm watching them trade out of phase with each other, and I'm like, I can tell you right now, Christine Lagarde is like, she's extra little honey in her tea this morning, like something, or echinacea or something, like maybe a little, an extra glass of wine this afternoon, because things don't look, the markets are clearly trying to break out of very tightly controlled ranges that they've been playing to try and keep a lid on all of this, and effectively shift the Overton window and keep the Overton window from shifting away from them. That's what I see.
That is so fascinating because you're right that the markets seem very controlled. Fixed income markets in particular, you've made the point about the long end of the curve being very controlled. Yeah. There were a lot of people who were afraid that a breakout above 5% on the 10-year was going to bring a market crash. And in fact, actually, what we've seen is the opposite. Right. But it's so fascinating because you've got an incredible backdrop of just mixed data, the consumer clearly rolling over, and yet the 10-year keeps rallying. The expectation is that the Fed's going to be bringing a cut in September, and they're going to be doing it and right in the face of just crazy U.S. politics. This U.S. election, we always knew it was going to be just batshit crazy, and it's turning out to be even more than that, right? Lord knows how.
This is funny. Like this, I think that's the first time you've sworn on my podcast. Yes, I love when I get those little moments, right?
Yeah, but we knew it was going to be, and we're going to have a rip-roaring Bitcoin bull market. We're setting up for that, right in the face of the election, right? It's we talked about this last time I was on your show, that Satoshi, maybe it was just because of how it aligned, that Satoshi created or released the white paper right in the face of the 2008 financial crisis, but that was right before a presidential election, and the 210,000 block cycle coincides on a 10-minute average block time with 4 years, which means that Bitcoin cycles coincide with the U.S. election cycles. And it is not, I think, a coincidence that that's the case. And we're going to have a rip-roaring bull market. And it sure seems like, Trump and Kennedy have embraced that. And Biden had this big kumbaya meeting yesterday with the White House staff, with Anita Dunn, apparently. And I'm hearing, she couldn't believe just how awful the SEC has been to this industry and recognized that something needed to be done. So then what happens yesterday? Biden recommends overriding the congressional veto of the SAB 121 fix, which you don't even need to know what that is. All it is that it was something pro-crypto that the banks also wanted. Well, then naturally, of course, there's a leak to Bloomberg. I say leak in air quotes because, of course, Bloomberg gets the leaks. And right after the veto fails to be overridden by Congress, the SEC sends a big middle finger to the industry by saying, we are selectively letting some banks get waivers from the SAB 121 accounting treatment. The big banks are getting waivers. Right. So now this is the SEC flipping the bird to the crypto industry saying, you guys came after me, and now the White House is upset with me. Yes. And here's what I'm going to do back to you. I'm going to let the big banks get a big head start, and I'm not giving waivers to any of you. Welcome to Bolshevik Washington, D.C. This is crazy. This is arbitrary and capricious. This is not how the United States system is supposed to work. But this is what this Warrenite crowd in charge in Washington, D.C. is abusing regulatory authority to pick winners and to reward the big banks at the expense of small startups. This is absolutely corrupt.
Yes. And you, I hate to interrupt you when you're like when you're going after Elizabeth Warren. I mean, to be honest with you, it's like, really, tell me more. You know what I mean? Like, the douche you say. So, no, seriously, like Warren, I think I said this. I don't know if I said it the last time you and I spoke, but I've been saying it a lot recently. For the last year, I'm like, if you're sick of Elizabeth Warren now, just wait until the election cycle, because it's only gonna get worse, and she's gonna now start ramping up attacks on the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates, and that's part of and again, that's all part and parcel of this. The Biden administration at this point has turned obnoxious and aggressively obnoxious and corrupt against anybody attempting to take them down in any substantive manner. And I mean, I can see this from the foreign policy front. I can see it from the domestic policy front, banking, crypto, this, and everything seems it continues to like argue my view of the world, which is that this is being driven by Europe and that the EU and the ECB complex needs the world to become what they want it to be. It's their vision of the future. No free banking, no private formation of capital, no cryptocurrencies, no free movement of capital in any way. Right. We're in charge of it all, and
everything.
Now we're just seeing apparatchiks in Congress just and at the alphabet agencies in the wake of Chevron.
Well, and that's what's so interesting is how many people voted with Biden not to override the veto of the SAB 121 fix, and then the SEC screwed all of them with this blatant corruption, and not even a few hours later, magically, this story from a senior, well-placed official at the SEC, probably Gensler himself, for all we know, right? But like, where are the law and order Democrats who got used here? Where are they?
You know where they're going to be? They're going to be with the Republican Party on all legislation between now and January. I think that's what's going to happen next, because like the revolt against Biden has become like epic, and it's clearly an operation. It's clearly it's clearly an operation. I mean, I'm like,
and it's Obama, and that's now acknowledged. It's openly acknowledged. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now the question is why? And it's because they're trying to win the election, or is it because it may be, but for the individual House and Senate members that have to run for re-election, being associated with any of this shit show is toxic to them.
They just got played. They just enabled this giveaway to the big banks by the SEC.
I mean,
that's not going to play.
Also they're acting like everybody in the Democratic Party is as terrible as Elizabeth Warren. This is clearly not the case. It's the same thing with saying that everybody in the Republican Party is as clearly horrible as Mitt Romney, right? So, on both sides, neither of those two things are true.
Correct.
And the people caught in the middle having to run for re-election are going to revolt against all of this.
Yeah. And I hope that several of them who voted with Biden yesterday not to override the veto come out and say what the SEC is doing is wrong. We did not enable the big banks to get a special giveaway at the expense of everybody else. But that's what their vote yesterday did. And I hope that that the opponents of the people who voted with Biden yesterday use that in their races, regardless of which political party it is, because that's exactly what happened. They all got played. But you know, you and I've talked about this too, that there's sort of this last gasp of power, because it was pretty clear that Warren was getting rolled on a lot of things, right? She's been rolled on the Basel III endgame. She's been rolled on crypto, right? You now actually have the moderates who have frozen her out. Like you said, they're trying to get legislation done before the end of the year. And she's not at the table because she would try to blow it up. But the moderates want to get something done. And so now the interesting question is, will Trump come over the top? I'm now specifically talking about crypto. Will Trump come over the top and say what he did on immigration? Just wait, I'll get, you know, you'll get something better if I'm elected president, and you do it later. I don't think that's going to be the case, because at least vis-a-vis crypto, if the Democrats take the House again, Maxine Waters won't let anything through. So the interesting, and she's chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. So she is a committed Warrenite. So if she regains the control of the committee in the House, there will be no crypto legislation. So I think a lot about this. Like Anita Dunn told the group of crypto people that Biden, if a bill comes through Congress before the end of this term, Biden will sign it. And I believe that that's true, because I know that the moderate Democrats, including the Senate leadership, are behind this. So we may very well get crypto legislation, but see, this is what's so interesting about these Warrenites, the Jacobins that are sitting in the agencies right now, that Warren placed in these agencies. They're doing everything they can to blow things up on the way out, and that's exactly what Gary Gensler just did. He flipped the bird to the industry, who he couldn't beat in court. And he couldn't beat politically because of this Kumbaya meeting and Anita Dunn hearing, oh my God, we've basically lost all these, these 30-something crypto voters. And we are big enough. Chris Lahane, a buddy of mine from law school who helped Obama get elected. He was back in the early Obama years, one of Obama's campaign strategists, brilliant, obviously succeeded. And he told me and I think I tweeted about this at MainNet last fall, we crypto voters are a big enough block to swing elections, especially in the close areas. And he was really going after the Biden crowd. Stop doing this anti-crypto thing. You are losing key voters. He is a committed Democrat. And it's been fascinating to watch him, because he's been absolutely right. But the problem is that the ideologues in the agencies want to burn down as much as they can on the way out. And so at first I thought they would, that the senior agency staff would prevent them from doing this, but it appears that's not the case at all. And interestingly, Christy Romero, who was the new FDIC nominee, had her confirmation hearing yesterday, and Warren came out heavily in support of her. So, So is anything going to change, even if Marty Gruenberg gets, pushed out of the FDIC?
Right.
We don't know.
I don't know. This is all really fascinating. I'm glad you brought this up from your perspective and what the areas of the government that are important to you. Like, because I don't follow this stuff on a regular basis. I follow, I follow other aspects of it. So it's like, oh, we're just like slotting in another. Oh, really? Again, tell me more. Like, these people are communists. What else is new? And I love the use of the word Jacobin as well. I think it's very, very important to understand that these people don't work for the American people. They don't work for us. They never have. They never will. They're going to, and they are under orders to destroy the country as much as humanly possible beforehand. Now, to your point about Trump is a deal maker at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And he'll say what he needs to say to get elected. But what I also think, when I look at the milieu surrounding Trump Trump is going to delegate on like something like crypto. He's going to delegate on this.
Of
So
course.
watch who. So because he's the
Yes, personnel
CEO.
is policy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Who's
his
he gonna
personality.
pick? Yeah,
Yeah, personnel is policy, and his personality is that he's an excellent CEO that will delegate as
yeah,
long as he can trust the people around him. So
yeah,
this time, will he have people around him that he can trust? It's an open question. I think
yeah.
he'll have a higher percentage of people he can trust than he did in 2016. But whether or not they're going to be the right people in the right agencies, oh, that's another
We don't
story.
know. And his VP pick is going to be an interesting
Well,
piece. Let's
you
come
know where
back to
my
that in a second.
you know where I stand on that
I
one. Like I,
do.
and the more I watch Tulsi Gabbard operate the long form podcast circuit, the more I am convinced that he is the ultimate piece of Trump insurance against the globalists. Oh, you just want to kill him off? Well, fine. Then you got her. She's worse than he is.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because she's not on any of the official short lists, right? But of course,
Right.
everybody's being gaslighted, right? And
Mhm.
so who knows what the real short list is. But I did want to go back where you said something that somebody who might be listening to us for the first time
Right.
might be shocked by saying that this Warren crew just wants to tear down the United States.
Right.
They have said so in their own motto, build back better. Build back
Yes.
better. What does that imply? You've torn something down first. Okay. So
Right.
I just want to underscore that it's been out there in front of everybody. If you just kind of thought critically about what does it mean to build back better, you're tearing something down first. And that's exactly what they're doing. And anyone who doesn't think, and I come from a very mixed family politically, we just
Right.
can't talk politics. And
Sure.
I just, man, very, very, very bright people. I just look at it and wish they could see it, but they just can't because they're watching MSNBC every day, and some are watching Fox every day, and only getting one piece of the narrative. I flip around because I want to hear. I recognize that we're all being gaslit all the time,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
you've got to actually go to alternative sources of media, and you've also got to um, really just question everything and expose yourself to all the different sources of media, because the traditional sources of media always are pushing a narrative, and I want to always know what that narrative is. But the whole
Right.
build back better thing, just stop and think critically about it. So yeah, so
Great point.
I don't know who Trump is going to pick for VP. He did say that depending upon what Biden does, it might influence his pick. I don't know
Yeah.
what that means. We'll see. I don't even know if if he's made the decision yet. Um,
He's supposed to make it, I think, next week, actually, right before the convention. I think it was like the 18th or something like that. He's
I
going
mean,
to make.
that's normally done, right? So that you can introduce the pick at the convention, but then think about what McCain did with Sarah Palin. It
Right.
was so risky because she wasn't known
Right.
and she wasn't defined. And so when he introduced her at the convention, the mainstream media had the ability to seize the narrative about her, and she never recovered from that.
Yeah. I know.
So it's risky to do it that way, especially if he's going to pick somebody who's not widely known. We'll see.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be a very interesting thing. I don't know. I've got like two or three my personal short list. I've got like three people on it. Honestly, Gabbard is my personal pick. I think Mike Flynn is also a potential here. It's
Hmm.
like the ultimate like middle finger. Like, oh, by the way,
Yeah.
you got rid of him as my national security director. Like, and Obama, fuck you. Here's the here he is, and he's going to be, and his job is going to be to go after all these people. Like,
Yeah.
and that's going to
Yeah.
be the end of it, right? Or it could, I mean, and then there's obviously the front runner. I think within normie Republican talk. I was listening to Megyn Kelly the other day, and she's actually interviewing with Tulsi Gabbard, and she said JD Vance, and I'm like,
Mm.
why would you take Vance out of the Senate? Like it's the same argument about Rand Paul making him Treasury Secretary. Unless you feel like you're going to get coattails, going back to let's circle back to something you alluded to earlier. Unless Trump wins and is allowed to win with enough coattails to get a real majority in the Senate and a real majority in the House. I mean overcoming the Rhino buffer,
Yeah.
overcoming the Romneys and the Lindsey Grahams and the rest of them, overcoming the Rhino buffer. So that means he's got to take like 50, 55 seats. In name only, right? Or 54 seats in the
Okay.
Senate. If he has those kind of coattails, he can do whatever he wants.
Yes.
He can
Agreed.
pluck a couple of people out of the Senate that are good people out of the Senate and in the House. If he doesn't, they all need to stay there. And now you have to pull people from outside of the traditional, what the current seniority structure of the GOP. And the GOP is very seniority based.
Correct.
So,
So's the Democratic
all
Party.
these
Yeah.
are all
Yeah.
arguments that we've been bandying about within my community for like weeks now. Because
Yeah.
I say Gabbard, and then all my really astute political guys go, yeah, but, and they're not wrong. But I'm like,
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
like I think that Gabbard fits all those bills, all those ticks, all those boxes, along with the fact that she is truly the woman who's walked away from power multiple times. She's been handed to her on
Correct.
a silver platter, and then she
Correct.
walked away from it. Perfect
Yeah.
story. And for her to walk into the convention with Trump and her like show the like newly signed GOP card, like, dude,
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm an amateur screenwriter. I can't write a better story than that. Fuck off.
yeah,
Like,
very
you know what I
interesting.
mean?
Not enough people, speaking of newly signed GOP card, not enough people are talking about the platform that Trump pushed through. And there's definitely some kvetching that he pushed through this platform. But for the first
Yes.
time in 40 years, the abortion plank changed, and
Yes.
there's a pro crypto plank in the platform.
Yes.
That is more than just Trump, giving lip service to crypto. And so now the question is the Davos crowd going to ensconce their own financial services regulators if Trump wins? Because he did that with Mnuchin, right? Mnuchin was a traditional banker who hated Bitcoin. And he was the reason why Trump was anti-Bitcoin at the end. And my tweet with Trump engaged when Trump came out and said, I don't like Bitcoin. It was maybe 6 months before the end of Trump's first term. That was the tweet that the community got behind, because I had a tweet thread explaining to him that, you're really missing out. But that all was coming from Mnuchin. And so who he appoints as Treasury Secretary, and frankly, who he appoints as Chief of Staff, those are the two most important things I'm watching. Because I don't think he's going to be a foreign policy president. He's going to be a domestic policy president. And Tom, here's the other interesting thing. I know I just kind of keep my ear to the ground, talk to anybody who's interested in talking about crypto. Doesn't matter which political party. So I'm talking to a lot of people and listening to a lot of people and hearing a lot of things. Trump's going to do serious Fed reform. Yeah. And it's about time, especially everything I've dealt with. Yeah.
I think it's pretty obvious he's going to do so as well. And the question that I have now is, and I know this is the area where you and I are like not completely on the same page, but to be honest with you, the way Powell is setting things up, he's almost setting the Fed up to be reformed in some ways. Like you have to break the Eurodollar system. You have to break that before you can do Fed reform. I watched I watched parts of Powell's testimony the other day, and it was very, very clear that, like, I am not allowed to talk about what I'm allowed to talk about. He goes to the ECB the other day and literally says to Christine Lagarde, I don't see inflation coming back below 2% until the end of 2026. That's his big way of saying, you're on your own, honey.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care. Wear a red neck scarf. You're going to need it. No, that's serious. He's done this twice to her now in 3 years. And he's not, I think, I know you and Powell, I know from the crypto perspective, I see it, I get it.
Yeah. I mean,
I get all the criticism.
He was a tool of Elizabeth Warren in the anti-crypto, and it's still going on, Tom. I mean, the stuff that the Fed's doing behind the scenes to try to kill the crypto industry.
And maybe that's the issue. And the other side of it, I was watching Judy Shelton the other day on CNBC, and she was talking about the Fed and their policy with respect to trade policy and monetary policy, and how that's going to affect potentially with Trump coming in and putting up tariffs and all the rest of it. And again, we'll see. Like, I keep watching the Tether market cap, and I keep knowing that, as far as I'm concerned, I still think that Tether is like marginal flow for U.S. Treasury. Is a marginal.
Oh yeah, and it's getting bigger, right?
For U.S.
And clearly, the U.S. government hasn't shut it down yet. It could have. So, right.
Exactly.
So it's keeping it alive, right? You got a primary dealer managing all the T-bills for it. Yeah.
Right. Like what I say is the following: it's a big ship. It takes a long time to turn around. You've got multiple conflicting agencies and imperatives and incentives and all of the stuff that have to be worked out. It's going to be horrible it's going to look terrible on one hand. It's going to look good on the other. The simple fact that Tether exists and hasn't been shut down, I think, is the biggest tell that the Fed really doesn't have that big a problem with crypto, as long as they have some way of maintaining its, I don't know, there's a relationship with the dollar that doesn't impact them. I think they're okay with it.
what happened to Custodia is the exception
I
that
know,
proves that's
I
not
know it is.
true. Because they told us, wink, wink, nod, nod, come on in and apply to become a Fed member bank. We didn't want to have to do that in the beginning,
Right.
but we got the wink, wink, nod, nod from the general counsel of the Fed, and we did. So they could have had us as a regulated Fed member bank.
I
And
know.
instead, they used all the information that we did not have to give them. They actually conflated the membership application and the master account application, two totally different statutes. Master account application, 1 page, no analysis of the business plan, no sort of rechartering in history. The Monetary Control Act says all eligible depository institutions shall get these services, which is why the application was only 1 page. Membership application is like a rechartering. So that's thousands of pages, right? And they illegally conflated the two. So they took all the information that we gave them voluntarily because we got lured in by the general counsel to apply to become a Fed member bank, and they used it against us in the denial of the master account. Okay, so Powell's going to get what he deserves. And by the way, we did file the appeal. There's only so much I can say about it,
Sure.
but the way that appeals work, it's de novo on legal review. So the legal questions that come up in district courts are reviewed de novo at appeal. Okay, and our case is a legal question case. But here's the thing: you probably saw we have 3 former solicitors general involved in our lawsuit now on our side, and the former Solicitor General of Virginia. This is a bipartisan mix of people. Some of these folks, like Don Verrilli and Paul Clement, typically face off against each other at the Supreme Court, and then they're on our side in the Custodia case against the Fed. Okay, there are constitutional issues that have been raised, and there's only so much that I can say. But here's Paul Clement's brief in particular, just goes straight into the heart of the structure of the Federal Reserve and whether it's constitutional. People for years, including in your community, have been saying you have private bankers making decisions here. Here's the issue. And Peter Conti Brown has a whole chapter in his book about this. So this has been around for a long, long time. Academics have said, look, the structure of the Fed is unconstitutional. Why? Because you have the 12 regional Federal Reserve Bank presidents that are appointed by their boards that are controlled by bankers, making decisions and doing official U.S. business, and the U.S. president cannot fire them.
Yes.
And there's actually in Peter Conti Brown's book a big discussion. What if the president decided that he wanted to fire the president of the New York Fed? What would he have to do? He'd have to fire the FOMC, then he'd have to fire the Federal Reserve Board. And essentially, the problem is basically you can't have nested for-cause firing provisions where there are 2 layers of nesting. And that's the way the Fed works. And the way Peter aptly describes it is you cannot have these for-cause firing protections nested like Russian dolls. And I love the visual of that, because what people have been screaming about for years, that private bankers are making official U.S. government decisions in their role on the FOMC and in the Custodia case. The district court found that the Federal Reserve Bank president of Kansas City made the decision to deny Custodia. Now, that is not true. And we've vehemently challenged that. The Board of Governors was involved, but the Paul Clement brief handles this so brilliantly, because he said, if that is true, then not only does that violate the U.S. Constitution, because the president has to be able to fire the officers of the U.S. government, whether they be principal officers who are Senate confirmed or inferior officers who report to someone who's Senate confirmed. Well, those 12 regional Federal Reserve banks don't report to someone who's Senate confirmed, and they can't be fired by the U.S. president. Okay, this is a problem. This has been a problem for years. But here's the thing. He said they went even further, because by saying that these private individuals were making the decisions on behalf of the U.S. government, they were acting as principal officers, and they need to be Senate confirmed. So this is all now open.
Yeah, no, this is great.
In a appeals case with 3 former solicitors general lined up and a former solicitor general of a state lined up. Now, where will this go? I don't know. It's all I'll say, and I've said this before, I don't know if the Fed's listening. We never wanted this fight. We're just a small little Wyoming bank who just wanted to operate with the master account to which we were entitled. We did everything. When they said, apply to become a Fed member bank, we did. We got the wink and nod, go apply for FDIC insurance. We knew we weren't going to get it, but we did it anyway. And lo and behold, we didn't get it. So we did everything we could. I mean, everything to work with the Fed, and they forced us into this situation. And if any of them, and I know because there are factions inside the Fed, are regretting that they're in this situation, faced with what they're facing now in this lawsuit, it was their own choice.
Yes. And they should get what they richly deserve. And remember, any defense that I make of the Fed is purely tactical from a can we save the country perspective. I am still a hardcore Austro anarcho capital, like fuck central banking. And so, and I love what you just laid out for us, because it actually dovetails perfectly with the roll over think about what the two stories you told in this podcast, and we'll leave it here because I know you have to go.
Yeah.
Think about these two stories and how, these people did one hand of government did something else, and another hand of government then reversed, and they betrayed people, and then we wind up in this terrible situation where nobody is served.
Correct.
Nobody is served. Justice isn't served. The people aren't served. The industries aren't served. The industries that they're supposed to be regulating aren't served. But somebody, and again, people make mistakes all the time. And when you put incompetent people under extreme pressure, they invariably make mistakes. I'm going to leave that with the last thing I'm going to say is, now go and look at what's happening over in the European Union, and you're watching morons be put under unbelievable pressure, and they're going to fail dramatically. And I think, Caitlin, as the next 6 to 9 months play themselves out, we're definitely going to do this again, even if we only do another 30-minute one like we did this morning. This theme is only going to get deeper and more and richer.
As this presidential election and the geopolitical environment just keeps getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and crypto it doesn't care. It doesn't know whether there's an SEC. It doesn't. I mean, German government's selling crypto and just and obviously dumping it in a way to try to crash the price. This is all temporary.
I mean, honestly, the Germans like dumping Bitcoin like this is a wealth transfer from Germany back towards to some other
buyers, of course.
Obviously the buyers, and who are those buyers? They're probably the big ETF providers who are short Bitcoin, who don't have enough to cover their influence.
Very well could be. But let's do this again. Thank you, and thanks for doing this for keeping it short. Let's do this again. I like the short form. We packed a lot in, and we'll do this again, maybe once or twice before the election as things evolve.
As I said to you before we started recording, all you need to do is give me about an hour's time.
Awesome.
Give me an hour. I know you're very busy, so just give me an hour or 2 hours worth of notice, and we'll jump on.
This is great. I so appreciate you, because you make me think. I don't agree with everything you say, but boy, do you ever make me think. And I love the way you describe your community as a hive mind, because you get people who challenge you. And I love being parts of communities like that, because that's what challenges me. So have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for getting together.
Well, that'll about wrap it up for episode 183 of the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. I really do want to thank Caitlin Long for taking what little time she had available to chat with me for a little bit. So I do appreciate it. As always, Caitlin is house on fire, and she's awesome, and you should follow her on Twitter and follow the travails of Custodia Bank. So with that said, I'm out. As always, you can follow my work at my blog over at goldgoatsandguns.com. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. And of course, you can sign up for the Patreon at Patreon/Gold, Goats, and Guns, where we have both twice weekly market reports going over the events of the day and the technical state of important markets, as well as a monthly newsletter. And another programming note, just to let everybody know that I will be speaking at this year's Mises Donor Conference in Hilton Head, South Carolina, in October, and you can find that information of that event out at Mises.org. So with that said, you guys be well, you take care, we'll talk soon, and keep your stick on the ice.